Sophie and Abigail. The day that Sophie Rabbit started school for the first time, she was too excited to eat her breakfast. "Eat up, Sophie," said her dad. "Leave her alone, George," said her mom. "Her tummy knows best. Feed the baby, please. Louise, while I find Sam's football shorts." Sophie's brother and sister went to the big school now. They were always talking about their teachers and friends. Sophie listened to their stories with tall ears. She simply couldn't wait to start school herself. But when Sophie finally arrived at Byrie Preschool, she suddenly felt very shy and clung tightly to Mrs. Rabbit's paw. "Will you stay?" she whispered. "A little while," said her mom, with a comforting squeeze, but Sophie knew that her mother couldn't stay long because she had to get back to baby Gareth. Mrs. Badger, the teacher, showed Sophie her coat peg. Then Sophie's mom gave her a hug and turned to go. Sophie had never felt more alone in her life. And then, "Excuse me," said a small voice. "Can you see a mouse peg anywhere?" Sophie looked down. A tiny mouse was staring up at her. "This is yours," said Sophie, pointing at one. "Could you put my hat on it? I can't reach it. By the way, I'm Abigail." "Of course," said Sophie, holding out her paw. "I'm Sophie. Let me help you." And so the great friendship began. "I've got a friend," announced Sophie that night. "Her name is Abigail." "Who?" asked her dad. "Abigail. She's a mouse." "Big name for a mouse," said George Rabbit. "That's nice, dear," said Mrs. Rabbit, spooning mashed turnip into Gareth. "So," said Sam, "I've got hundreds of friends." "Me too," said Louise. "Thousands." "I don't care," said Sophie happily. I don't want more friends, only Abigail." From that first day on, Sophie and Abigail did everything together. They played in the sandbox and on the seesaw. They helped pause on nature walks. They saved each other chairs at circle time. They shared apples and cookies and secrets. Sometimes other animals would try to play with them, but both Sophie and Abigail thought it was more fun on their own. "Can Abigail come after school?" asked Sophie a few weeks later. "Who?" asked her dad. "Abigail," explained Mrs. Rabbit, "Sophie's friend." "Yes, dear, she can come tomorrow if you like. I'll buy some snacks. George, look after Gareth, would you? He's choking on a cabbage leaf." But the following morning, Abigail wasn't in school. Sophie kept looking at the door to see if Abigail would arrive late, but she didn't. The other animals were busy playing and didn't seem to notice that Sophie was on her own. That afternoon, there were too many cookies for snack time. The next morning, Mrs. Badger took Sophie off to the side. "Bad news, Sophie," she said. "Abigail's family has moved to the other side of the woods to look after her sick granddad. Abigail won't be coming to this school anymore." "Never?" "I'm afraid not. But don't be too upset, dear. There are lots of other nice little animals to play with." But it wasn't the same without Abigail. At circle time, nobody saved Sophie a chair. At playtime, there was no one to sit on the other end of the seesaw. "What's up, Sophie?" asked Sophie's dad that evening. "You look a bit down in the whiskers. Can I help?" So Sophie told him all about Abigail and how much she missed her. "And no one wants to play with me. They've all got their own friends." "Poor old Soph," said George Rabbit. "It's always hard to lose a friend. But Miss Badger's right. Making new friends can be hard sometimes, but it's worth it in the end." "Are you sure?" asked Sophie. "I am. But suppose Abigail forgets me." "She won't." The following morning, Sophie missed Abigail terribly. But at circle time, Gordon Fox offered her his chair, and Kelly and Fran, the Mouse twins, asked her to play dress up. So the time went quite quickly. And then something unusual happened. A new frog arrived, named Graham. He wasn't sure where to put his scarf. "There's a free peg next to mine," Sophie told him. "But it's got a mouse on it," said Graham. "It belonged to my friend Abigail," said Sophie, "and I'm sure she won't mind." When Sophie got home that day, there was a surprise waiting for her. "There's a letter for you," said George Rabbit. "It came in the afternoon mail. I think it's from that friend of yours." Abigail," Sophie reminded him, tearing it open excitedly. This is what it said. "Dear Sophie, please come to lunch on Sunday. I will show you my new room. Granddad is getting better. Do you like sandwiches? Love from Abigail. P.S. I miss you." I had a letter from Abigail," Sophie announced happily to Graham Frog next morning. "I'm going to have lunch with her on Sunday." "Really? That's nice," said Graham. "Would you like to seesaw?" And together they ran out into the sunshine.